So let's get to the nitty-gritty about the truth whether the Talmud is of the opinion that Messiah can only be from the living, or whether there's a possibility that Messiah could be from those that are deceased. So I'm going to focus on a piece of Talmud that's at the bottom of the page of Sanhedrin 98b, which goes as follows. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav that in the future the Jews will have another David, not King David himself, but will seek out another David, and this David will be the Messiah. And this is in Jeremiah verse 9. It says, "And they will serve the Lord their God and their King David that I will establish for them." That I will establish, not that I have established. So you see from there the fact that God will establish, that this is not somebody who has already been established as the king, meaning King David, but there will be another David, somebody from the Davidic household, who will then be established later. In other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav, King David will not be the Messiah. This requires a little bit of a discussion as to why it was necessary to negate the possibility that David himself will be the Messiah. The answer to you is that this already is found in the Jerusalemite Talmud, in the second chapter of Berachos, the first of the tractates, the second chapter, very similar to this piece in the Talmud Sanhedrin. They go through the prayers, and the prayers we're praying for the advent, the coming of the Messiah, and they ask in the Jerusalemite Talmud there, what is the name of the Messiah? And they go through all the names, all the possibilities, as are found in the Talmud here, 98b. With one exception, says Rabbanan Amri, Rabbanan say, if he is from the living, then his name will be Messiah. But if he's from the dead, then his name, if he's from the living, his name will be David. If he be from the dead, then his name is also David. But the difference between the two is, if you look in the Pnei Moshe, the commentary in the Jerusalemite Talmud, is that he will be David himself. In other words, the rabbis of that generation, meaning the majority of rabbis of that generation, believed that Messiah had to be either somebody named David or David himself. And apparently, they must have felt that it would be King David himself. Because otherwise, why does Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rav, have to go ahead and prove from this verse of Jeremiah that it's going to be another David, that in the future God will establish a new David? Why would I think that the old David was good to be the Messiah? After all, according to Professor Berger, this is a Lubavitch heresy, that Messiah is from the dead. Obviously, there was a school of thought that King David would be the Messiah, and Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rav, says, no, it will not be King David, it will be someone from the Davidic dynasty later. This tradition from the name of Rav was accepted in Babylon, but Rav Papa objected to this. Rav Papa was the student of Rava and Abaye, and he asked Abaye, how can we accept the words of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav, that we will establish, that God will establish for us a new David, when it says in Ezekiel 36, V'avdi David nasi aleim li'elam, my servant David will be the prince upon them forever. Now, the prince, there he's talking about the difference between the kingdom of Joseph and the kingdom of Judah, and that it is David who will be the prince. It won't be the tribe of Ephraim or Manasseh from the tribe of Joseph, but rather the Davidic dynasty. But it talks about my servant David. So Rav Papa is asking Abaye, David has to be the Messiah. That's what it says in Ezekiel, and that contradicts what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav. So what does Abaye answer him? Abaye answers him that David will indeed be the Nasi, but he won't be the Melech, he won't be the king. There will be a different king. That king will be a different David. As the Yerushalmi itself says, that he will be called David, but it won't be the original David. What will David's role be? David's role will be Palgi Keser. He will be the administrator. He will be the one in charge of daily activities. Now let's examine this. Rav Papa was objecting to the concept that a new David would arise and be the Messiah. That David should have been the Messiah himself. But David was dead already. By the time Rav Papa was talking to Abaye, it was already 1,200 years. When the Talmud Yerushalmi was discussing this, it was 1,100 years after David had died. How could David be the Messiah according to Rav Papa? If Messiah cannot be from the dead, how could David be the Messiah? And the answer is obvious, that Messiah can be from the dead. And that this is a legitimate concept. This is what the rabbis and the Yerushalmi were saying, that David could be the Messiah. Because David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. We'll explain it in the next video. But clearly from the Yerushalmi, it's clear that this is a distinct possibility. And in fact, Rav Papa accepted this possibility as real. That this was the major opinion of those rabbis, that Messiah would be David, not another David. And Abaye didn't go ahead and put Rav Papa in Cherem and excommunicate him and say that his shechita is no good and his wine is no good because he believes that somebody who's from the dead can be raised up as the Messiah. On the contrary, Abaye answered that David will indeed rise up, but he won't be the Messiah. And you see from Abaye's answer, as well as from the question of Rav Papa, that the idea that Messiah could be from those who have been deceased is legitimate.